let's go ahead and get started. So this webinar is focused on engaging employees in safety. I'll give a little introduction before I get rolling with that, though. If I can get my PowerPoint to, there we go. So first and foremost, I think I have everybody muted, but just make sure that your microphones are muted so there's not any background noise or anything like that that interferes with like the presentation. Again, I think everybody's good though, so thanks for that. All right, so a little bit about myself. My name is Brennan Perry. I'm a safety professional with SOS Safety Solutions. I've been with SOS for almost 4 years now. I've got about 8 years of safety experience in various industries, manufacturing, warehousing, healthcare, education, the steel industry. So I've kind of been around a pretty good amount of different industries. Gives you a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from when I talk about certain situations and things like that. I do have a bachelor's degree in safety management. I went to Slippery Rock University, much like a good bit of our department. So that's where I got my schooling. And I do live in Pennsylvania. I'm a little bit south of Pittsburgh, so southwest Pennsylvania. It's a pretty nice area, pretty accessible to my area of responsibility. So that's enough about me, though. So let's back up here. I guess I have you all muted, so I won't be able to hear too much. I'll unmute you guys just for a bit. Let's see here. How do I do that? I guess you can all unmute yourselves, I think. Does anybody have a difficulty engaging their employees in the safety process, like the day-to-day safety stuff? I mean, feel free to chime in if you need to.
Of course, sometimes even though people know that they need to get a ladder, they grab a chair. It doesn't, you may have told them 25 times why not to do that, but sometimes they just do it anyway.
Sure. That's one of those examples that I use all the time when I'm dealing with people, is the ladder versus the chair kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced that kind of scenario or behavior. So I'm hoping that this will help give you some ammunition, if you will, or ways to engage these employees that might be your I call them problem children, like just the ones that don't want to give in to the safety culture. I'm hoping that this helps out. So why do we want to focus on engagement, and what are the roadblocks to engagement? So the reasons why we want to focus on engagement: it creates a sense of ownership for the employees, or really anybody affected by the safety process. It fosters an open dialogue between employees and their superiors, management, etc. Engaged employees are going to be safer in general. So some reasons that you want to create that sense of ownership: when employees feel ownership, they feel empowered, they feel the ability to take their safety into their own hands and feel good about that. Management is always going to be responsible for providing that safe work environment, but employees should also feel a sense of responsibility and ownership of their safety. The open dialogue: employees should always feel comfortable coming to whoever is responsible in the area with concerns, with opportunities for improvement, things like that. A good culture, a high morale, is always going to be more productive and safer than a culture where employees feel that they're not valued, or that safety is an afterthought to production. So that's why we want to focus on engagement. So some roadblocks for engagement would be a lack of involvement for employees, or a lack of opportunity to become involved, maybe a lack of a safety committee, or the employee perception of a safety program. So the lack of involvement or opportunity, sometimes we get caught up in the daily rush of things, and we're focused on production, we're focused on meeting our numbers, and we're not giving employees the opportunity to step into a role where they might be able to positively affect their safety or other employees' safety. A lack of a safety committee. In the state of Pennsylvania, there's a certification process and things like that allow you to have discounts on your comp premiums and things like that. But even an informal safety committee is an excellent option. You might not reap all of the benefits, but you're still going to create that culture that employees feel that safety is a value, they have a voice. And then the employee perception of the safety program. Sometimes employees have this perception that the safety program is basically just out to get everybody. It's a program full of nonsense that doesn't create any value for them, and then it's just a bunch of roadblocks for them to get their job done. And that's really what we want to knock that roadblock out of the way, and let them know that the safety program is there for their benefit, to make sure that they go home the same way that they came to work, and that they can do the things that they like to do outside of work. Okay. So what are some things that we can do to improve this engagement, this maybe negative perception of the safety program? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to do that. We're going to improve that through involvement. Involve employees in the safety process. Facilitate the conversation between employee and supervision, and consult employees on their day-to-day tasks. So when I say involve employees in the safety process, something that should be done all the time, whether you have a formal safety committee or not, is regular department audits or housekeeping walkarounds, things like that. Involve employees in that process. Give them the ability to hold themselves and others accountable for their areas. When they feel that involvement, and when they're included in these processes, I'll go back to that ownership feeling. They feel that they can actually contribute something to their area, to their process. Facilitating conversation. Safety meetings are very important. A lot of people look at them as a complete formality that you have to do, and you might come in Monday morning, give your safety meeting, and send everybody on their way. But what safety meetings should be about, you should be covering perhaps a specific topic, but this should be an opportunity for employees to bring up concerns, bring up, hey, maybe we need to look into changing this procedure or this policy because it's not working. I still feel unsafe. Consult employees on that kind of stuff, because they know their job the best. They know the ins and outs. They know, hey, maybe this particular procedure isn't working because X, Y, or Z, whereas somebody in a management or a supervision role that either hasn't or doesn't do that job, they might not know that, and something might not have gone into the procedure creating process that could be very vital to the safety of these employees. So definitely involve employees in what affects them. That really has, in my past experience, been a big help. So give them that opportunity. So some methods for engaging employees, like I was saying, the involvement process, but make safety personal. Involve the employees in safety inspections. Ask questions about their job. Assign responsibility in their areas. So one thing that I took from a previous job that really resonated with me, I had a coworker, another safety manager at the time, that um, went about things in a very interesting way. If we would see somebody doing something unsafely, or even a job that you might perceive as safe, we would approach the individuals and ask them, if you were to have your child or your loved one do this job, would you feel comfortable having them do this job? If they could honestly answer yes, I would feel comfortable putting my child in this job and or this particular task, and not have any concerns, then typically we left it at that. If they looked at you and said, well, I never thought of that. No, I wouldn't. We would then approach it as, well, why do you feel that it's okay for you to do the job this way when you wouldn't have a loved one do the job that way? You should never place yourself in a situation that you wouldn't place a loved one, if that makes any sense. It really opened a lot of people's eyes. I definitely saw that look of, wow, I really never thought of it that way. That makes a lot of sense. I never considered how unsafe this may be, because you kind of view yourself as a little bit different than you would a child or a niece or a nephew or things like that. So it really, I personally really like to approach things that way. Um, Another thing that really engages employees, again, when I was starting out as a young safety manager in a steel mill, I had never done the jobs that people that I was overseeing were doing. So my credibility, if you will, wasn't where you'd always like it to be. So I would find senior guys and ask them. I'd spend a day to up to like a week with a guy and ask him all about what their job entailed. Why are you doing things this way? Why wouldn't you do it this way? Do you feel that this is the best way to do it? And in doing that, you make them the expert. Uh, when you do that, employees feel that you really value what they have to say. Um, and that goes a really long way with building rapport and building that engagement with those employees. The next time you go up to that employee and maybe have a safety concern, or maybe have a suggestion, they're going to take that a little bit differently than if you just approached them out of the blue and came up with all these suggestions and comments about what you thought they were doing wrong. Really, in the safety world, building rapport is almost as important as safety knowledge, in my opinion. So the more that you can relate to the employees that are you are overseeing or responsible for, the better. And then assigning responsibility, that goes back to that ownership stage as well. So assign responsibility to do daily checks, whether it be pre-use inspections, housekeeping walkarounds, even like a specialized inspection of a particular piece of equipment that maybe this employee has higher knowledge of than other employees. Again, make them the expert, make them the go-to person that makes them feel valued. A lot of times when employees don't feel valued, they disengage. They come in, put their 8 or 9 or 10 hours and whatever it is, and go home and don't think about safety, don't think about how to help the company, things like that. So once you start giving employees that value, if you will, that's when you're going to see people kind of come into their own. The next thing you want to do is create a culture focused on safety. So I'm going to skip to the last bullet here first and say that safety should be the number one priority of every employee, every supervisor, every manager, the CEO, the CFO, the owner. It it doesn't matter who you're talking about. Everybody involved with that company, the safety of their employees should be the #1 priority. That means, no taking shortcuts for particular tasks. Don't put safety ahead of meeting your production numbers. Everything needs to fall after safety. And you're going to find that when safety becomes the priority and employees are working in their safest capacity, they're going to be more productive. When you have the proper procedures in place and you have employees that are safety conscious, they're going to be able to work at a pace that is better. They're not going to worry about, am I going to get hurt doing this task, and maybe trying to get around certain things so that they can do the task safely. Again, safety and production, sometimes people think that they don't go hand in hand, but I feel that they do. When your facility is safer, your production is going to be even better. Employees should feel comfortable stopping work due to a safety concern. Can't tell you how many times I've come across employees that say, this task isn't very safe, but it is what it is. We have to do what we have to do, and that should never be the approach that employees have. They should feel comfortable coming to their manager, their supervisor, and saying, hey, we need to change something because this just doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm putting myself at risk. When employees feel that they can do that, they're going to be more involved. They're going, especially without the fear of repercussions and stopping work. A lot of times people feel like they can't do that because of, production has to take place. But when employees feel that they can stop that because they truly feel unsafe, you're going to find that that whole culture of management versus employee disappears, and more conversation is going to come out and improvements are going to be made. So who's responsible for employee safety? Management needs to be responsible for providing a safe work environment, whether it be per OSHA with the general duty clause, we are responsible for providing a safe work environment, or even just through the culture. Hey, managers are responsible for a particular area. They need to hold themselves accountable. And by accountable, I'll get to that in a later slide, but basically it's just taking responsibility for your actions, taking responsibility for what you say you're going to do. When you have an accountable manager, you're going to have an accountable workforce, because the employees are going to hold the manager accountable. The manager is going to hold the employees accountable. Accountability is everything when it comes to safety. And again, going back to the previous slide, employees need to be able to feel comfortable bringing concerns to their supervisor. They should feel that they're not going to be blown off when they bring a safety concern. I know that may be the perception for some employees sometimes. And another thing, for employees to feel comfortable bringing concerns to their supervisor, it doesn't mean that the supervisor needs to be the friend to employees. Everybody is there to do a particular job. Everybody needs to be able to do their job. You don't need to be a friend to be responsible for the safety of your employees. So going into the accountability, as I said, management and leadership, however that is structured, should be held accountable for safety performance and safety culture in their area. Again, employees need to be comfortable and feel empowered to stop work in the event that they feel unsafe. Accountability really, sometimes there's that negative connotation of blame associated with being held accountable, and that's not the case. Being accountable, again, is doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. It is as simple as that. So when an employee brings a concern to you, and you say, okay, we'll take a look at that, you need to actually take a look at it. Document the conversation that you had, document when you went and looked at it, document work or improvements need to be made, put it out there. One thing that we used to do in a previous job of mine, anytime we had a safety meeting and there were concerns brought up, we had a spreadsheet that everything went into. It had the assigned responsible party, and it had a due by date that things were going to be addressed. And it was posted for the entire workforce to see. And we're talking over 1,000 people that looked at this spreadsheet and saw your name associated with that particular task. And a lot of times that alone drove you to make sure that task got done, because if you didn't meet that deadline, everybody saw it. Everybody from the plant manager to the area managers, to the hourly managers, to the hourly employees, to literally everybody saw exactly what you were assigned to be responsible for. And it really did create that sense of accountability for that particular task. So if that's something that you would need to do to create that accountability and hold people accountable for what they say they're going to be doing, it works. I don't know, does anybody have any questions or comments about that particular subject of accountability? Okay. Move on then. I believe that's it. So I know that wasn't too terribly long of a presentation, but I feel that sometimes engaging employees is something that people look at and they get worried of, oh, okay, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make people feel that they have a voice in this company when they're not a manager, they're not responsible for a particular area? It's just giving them a voice, giving them a feeling of ownership. Does anybody have any feedback or comments on that, or experience with it?
I actually have an example.
Sure.
So I'm helping one of our insureds through creating a safety committee,
Okay.
and they've left me with the task of actually doing all of the work, which is fine. And when we started, we decided that putting on this new safety committee would be the best would be to use the good, the bad, and the ugly. So they picked a few people from each of those categories. And a couple of months ago, it started with a lot of eye rolls, and now what they've accomplished in just a couple of months is unbelievable. And now in our meetings, they're all engaged. They bring up things where the owner will actually stop and say, back up, let's talk about this one further. We have a mock DOT audit happening now. They're just constantly they're excited to do the safety inspections and fix everything on them. They're talking about near misses. They're doing all of these things that they've never done in the past because they were afraid to open their mouths and never felt like anybody cared. And then the owner jumped right in and he admitted to them, he apologized to the whole committee and said, I honestly didn't know. And it has completely changed their culture in 4 months.
I 100% agree with you with the whole people not knowing. Sometimes you become disengaged if you're not in the process all the time, and that's extremely important for individuals that are in a position of leadership or ownership, that they also need to be engaged. The more people see that it's a value and it is actually important to everybody in the company, the better.
Right.
And it's another thing with safety committees is it's important to keep them on task. A lot of times they'll start out really good and they'll start becoming, I'll call them an outlet to complain, and then it becomes derailed. So it's really important to keep them actually engaged in what they're there to do. And I've seen a lot of good and a lot of interesting safety committees. More good than interesting, but
Yeah,
thanks for that.
Yeah, that's how I feel this one is. We start with an agenda, we keep it on track, and yeah, the eye rolls have turned into pride, so it's kind of nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anybody else?
I think the thing we struggle with, I mean, my company's pretty committed to safety, is just keeping it fresh because, you know, you want to have a safety meeting every month. And especially when you have a lot of long-term employees, they feel like, oh, if this is tripping hazards, it must be July. Like, you know, and I get why they say that. You know, go to CPR once a year, it starts to blend together after 20.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of perhaps having the employees come up with what they want to be the subject of the next safety meeting? And how has that worked out?
And again, you know, sometimes you get a really great idea, and sometimes you get, well, let me know by Friday because the meeting's on next Thursday.
Oh man, yeah.
And there's crickets on Friday, and you're like, well, I guess we'll talk about lifting techniques then. You know, like, yeah. And it's not terrible. I mean, I know people that have a lot harder time with it, but especially when you have long-term staff and your environment doesn't change a lot, it can be hard to keep it fresh and keep them focused on it.
Right. And that sometimes that's where that complacency does come in, is that you're getting the same thing every month, and you know, you do the same job every day, and the monotony comes in. So that's where that complacency comes in. It is hard to break that sometimes, but again, having like those employees take, I guess, the lead on certain things may help. I mean, you have to gauge that for yourself, but yeah, I mean, giving them a voice and giving them that outlet. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Does anybody have the safety ISO standard installed at their company? There's an ISO standard that just came out, I think last year or something, and we're actually thinking about installing it.
What ISO standard are you referring to?
It's a safety ISO standard that came out. It's similar to the quality and the EMS one, but it's tailored to safety. I was just wondering if anybody else had installed it. Because at our company, our quality and our EMS system is an integrated system, and this new safety standard is structured the same way as them two systems.
Let's see here.
I forget what it's called, but
is it 45,001?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody familiar with that? I'm honestly not at this point, but something to look into.
Yeah, it's written the same way as the ISO 9001 and the ISO 14001, which is environmental.
Mm-hmm.
It's written the same way.
Okay. Okay. Well, anybody else have questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good Wednesday.
You too. Thank you.
Take care.